I guess I didn't really want to make a video about this, but when I found this, it was actually quite funny. This wheel that's just one front wheel. It's not even the drive motor, like here on the back. The ball bearings are sealed, which is pretty nice. So you don't have to clean them. You can't actually clean them because you would have to disassemble the entire wheel for that. Probably use a press, a hydraulic press or something to get the center shaft out. But this is like 1.56 kilos. So the two front wheels alone are already 3 kilos. That's more than some skateboards. Just keep in mind, some bicycles weigh, like professional high grade bicycles weigh less than 10 kilos, like the entire thing, and you ride those with 50 miles an hour downhill or things like that. So it's pretty crazy to see one single wheel actually weigh so much. Well, now I'm certainly interested in seeing what's inside of this wheel, so maybe we can disassemble this really quick. The wheels are swappable, the tires are swappable after all, so maybe it's interesting to see what's inside and just get a better understanding of why this is so heavy. Oh, nice. So I'm also seeing that there's no Loctite on the screws. Let me try and get you a better perspective here. So you can just unbolt these reasonably tight, not too tight, which is great, but without Loctite, this is probably gonna come apart. Oh wow. Nice ball bearing. I mean, don't get me wrong, the quality here is very nice. The ball bearing by itself is pretty nice. I wouldn't say it's damaged, it feels very good. And then here we have a spring-loaded pin. I mean a spring washer. Not good to see here, but never mind. And then we have the center shaft, another ball bearing. This looks pretty beefy, and you can also see this is essentially the motor bell. So they use the very same components front and back. Usually you would see the magnets being glued to this as a wheel hub motor, and then the coil set would be inside. So I assume that the rear wheels are actually more like 5 kilos or so. And even though the tires are swappable, you can also see here, just try and get the brightness down a tiny tad. You can't, oh yeah. The tires are flush to the metal, they're pretty thick, so there's nothing you can do about like getting them aligned or anything. That's a production problem. I mean, it's not terrible, it's just that it will need a lot of revolutions to actually flatten, like even out, if it ever evens out. So it will always vibrate a little bit. Maybe I can try and cut these bubbles off. That is probably what I will do with my X-Acto knife. And after that, maybe it's a little better. We'll see. You can see it wobble a little bit. I will put some medium strength Loctite on here, and do yourself a favor, don't use the high strength one. It doesn't help. You will only have trouble getting it back apart, and just a tiny bit, this is already too much, is sufficient to actually put these bolts back in. Don't tighten them down all at once. You will want to do a cross pattern, so I usually tend to put them all in there. Get used to like a nice star pattern. Little comment here. now that I saw how this ball bearing is actually put together, it is impossible to over tighten it. So it's actually being held in place by this spring washer. It's not actually the nut putting tension on the ball bearing itself. I'm just putting a little bit of tension on it. Now you see it's still rolling, but it doesn't have any play. That's the most important part. This one I put a little bit of play on it because I didn't know what the internal structure looks like. So this is probably good for a little twist here at the end. Am I actually hitting it? Probably not. Still rolls, still fine, no play anymore. What I did realize though is that if you want to spin this rear wheel, so we are at the rear now, this doesn't spin very well. This does spin much better. So maybe some of my performance loss comes from this wheel, but I don't know what the problem is. So I might actually take the cap off, then we can also look at the motor. Here you can see the wheel hub motor in all its glory. Actually looks pretty nice. Could come from a bicycle, like all the magnets on the outside, coils on the inside. I hope this is just a little dirt and not rubbing. But in general, this is pretty sweet. Looks good. Here you can also see Loctite, and that's all. None of the other screws had any Loctite in them. Only these two diagonally split. This tire is wobbling so much. Good response. I really want to love this board. It has a fantastic deck, big powerful battery, even though the range with these wheel hub motors doesn't seem to be appropriate for the size of the battery, if I'm honest. So I need to test that more. I don't want to put any numbers out there, or any like real numbers out there. My first try was 15 miles. I was not exactly impressed with that number. Now I see that the wheels have a lot of friction, the tires wobble. The range of the remote is fantastic. I mean, it's a proven motor controller. They just need to give us a little bit more control over them and maybe do some more quality assurance on the wheel hub motors. I might actually contact Backfire and try to get a new motor, if that's even possible. I suppose the answer is yes. I should be able to just disassemble the drive unit and get a new motor. But what I really would like to have also is 4 new wheels. The tires are pretty terrible in quality, and they need to change that. They need to check the mold, and they need to make sure that this is actually round and it doesn't... What's wrong with the birds here? And it doesn't wobble. So they need to do a check on that. Right now they probably come out of the mold and they get shipped because of time constraints. But that doesn't seem to be a reasonable approach, especially for the future going forward.